Now, the number of homes earning more than their owners is falling, according to research out today. The mortgage lender, the Halifax, says house price growth is continuing to slow across the UK.
But the research shows homes do still rise in value by more than the average wage, but mainly in parts of London and the southeast of England. With us now in the studio is housing expert Henry Pryor. Good morning, to you. So, what's the reasoning behind what we're seeing now in terms of the market? I mean, obviously, lots of people say Brexit.
Well, I mean, the good news is that Easter is traditionally the busiest weekend in the year for estate agents. Buyers and sellers will be out, particularly in this kind of weather, looking at new homes, looking to move for all sorts of reasons. And the most important thing for everybody to understand is that there is a market you can buy and you can sell. It's just perhaps not as frothy a market as it was 2 years ago. So if you look at the headline figures, the average house price for the UK, that looks like, as you were rightly saying, that house price inflation is slowing slightly, but it masks huge regional differences where house prices are still rising in parts of the country, but in London and the southeast, for example, where a third of all the homes that are bought and sold every month and those transactions occur, actually prices are falling back. So,
but why is that? What accounts for that variation?
Well, lots of people are blaming Brexit, but the reality is that that's just a lame excuse, in my opinion. That there are people still going to need to rent and buy houses, whether we're in or out, whether we come out in a soft or hard Brexit. Of course, the housing market is desperately sensitive to these kind of things, general elections, referenda. These are all things that depress people's enthusiasm, perhaps, to move. But the bottom line is that probably taxes and fundamentally the cycle, house prices go up, they come down, they go up, they come down. That is what explains what the malaise, particularly in London and the south east.
We shouldn't be particularly worried, should we, about house prices dropping around London? I mean, they've been so ridiculously high already.
Yeah, I mean, this piece is about the fact that people's houses in parts of the country were earning more than the occupants. I mean, it's mad and absurd. And as you rightly say, Stephen, the good news is that whilst house price inflation may be slowing, which is bad news for estate agents, bad news for homeowners, we always tend to think, the good news is that they are becoming more affordable. So for those people struggling to get onto the housing ladder, looking to buy or rent properties, that's a positive.
And have we seen things like shared ownership and various schemes to entice people or encourage people to get onto the property ladder? Have we seen those factor into the bigger picture?
We've seen them. We've seen all too many of them, frankly. We've seen the government's very controversial Help to Buy scheme, which is at last coming to an end. What we've done traditionally since the credit crunch 10 years ago is to help people to afford house prices that they would otherwise be unable to afford. What we needed were more homes for those people who want to buy and rent those homes. And at long last, particularly this week, very interesting, we've seen lots of new changes from the government coming in, looking at ways of increasing the number of homes that are being built. And that pressure, I'm sure, is going to continue.
I mean, presumably, although there will be some people alarmed at these figures, and I say we all take a selfish view and think we want to be earning as much as we can.
Only if we own a home.
Well, yes, if we own a home.
If you're one of the 4 million who rents a home, this isn't actually quite such bad news.
But how are we in terms of, I mean, particularly for London and the South East, in terms of that sort of desperately awful negative equity situation?
We're a million miles from it. Ever since the credit crunch and changes that were brought in by the Bank of England on how lenders computed what people could borrow, they've stress-tested any new mortgage application so that people can afford to cope when interest rates, as they inevitably will rise. And that means that people are better prepared so that in the event of house prices falling significantly, you may remember the Bank of England had planned and were reported at the end of last year talking about house prices falling by perhaps 30%. I don't think that'll happen. But if it were to happen, the vast majority of people who have a mortgage are reasonably insulated from that sort of problem.
OK, Henry, good to talk to you this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you. If you live in the South East and you fancy getting more for your money, live somewhere else in the country. Lovely.
It's not that simple, though.
Well, I know it's not that simple, but I couldn't move out of London quick enough, frankly. Just saying. Lots of nice parts around the world.
Of course there are. But it's just not that simple. Anyway.